Max Keiser, time about to turn to Dr. Michael Hudson. Dr. Michael Hudson, welcome back.
Good to be here, Max.
All right, so you're the author of many books, including Killing the Host, which is my favorite, talking about banks, parasitical banks, etc. But welcome to Trumplandia.
Well, it's better to be here than the alternative.
What the alternative being Hillary hell?
That's what it would look like.
What's the contrast between Trump and Hillary?
Well, for a lot of people, it was that Hillary wanted to be very confrontational to Russia. You saw what she did in Libya. She destroyed one of the most prosperous societies in Africa, turned the arms over to al-Nusra, moved into Iraq, moved into Syria, and announced 3 times in the last 2 weeks that she was willing to shoot down Russian planes in order to have a no-fly zone there. So basically, what she was threatening was brinkmanship, and voters saw that, and they didn't think it was worth it. They wanted to throw out the neocons. So it was not only a vote against Obama and Wall Street, it was a vote against the neocons that Obama and Hillary had brought into office.
Right now, interesting that she had all the assets to work with, the celebrities. She had all the Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, Wall Street money, unlimited money, $1 billion worth of money. She had it all, and yet she lost. Trump was really...
That's why she lost.
Talk about it.
Well, people saw who's backing Hillary, and they saw Wall Street's backing Hillary, and they're not backing Trump. The corporations are backing Hillary. The neocons are backing Hillary. The Russia bashers and the people who want to go to war in the Near East are backing Hillary. Those are the people we don't want. There has to be an alternative. So the election was basically about the lesser of 2 evils. And Hillary's position was, I'm not Donald Trump. But Donald's position was, I'm not Hillary. And that won the election for him.
Wow. Now, states like Michigan and the Rust Belt, the Blue Wall, up there in the north and the Rust Belt, they went for Trump. They're hoping to get some jobs back out of all this, based on what he's been talking about. Do they have reason for hope?
I think so. Certainly, according to what he said, we don't know what policies he's going to do, and we don't even know who his cabinet's going to be. I guess the only hope for jobs that they have at the top of the list is infrastructure. And there are 2 ways of doing infrastructure. If it would have been Hillary, who also spoke about infrastructure, she'd do it privatization style. She'd do it, give it to Wall Street, give a cost plus, and if you give a cost plus contract to infrastructure companies, they're going to maximize the cost. But if
what we've seen in the defense business for years,
That's
the famous $800 hammer, that's exactly the cost plus legacy of you can throw it over to these guys, and the government has unlimited funds. Essentially, they're not accountable on the P&L basis, a profit and loss basis, like a regular business. So they get gouged. So this is the story of Obamacare, essentially, isn't it?
Exactly right. Now, Trump has a chance to do essentially the public option for infrastructure. If the government does it, the government can do it without having to charge interest and dividends and stock options and all of the costs that private enterprise builds in. He can avoid following the Margaret Thatcher route. And already...
Of privatization.
Privatization.
Okay, of using borrowed money from private banks and getting charged through the nose.
That's
you can
right.
simply have the government fund these things at no cost money, and the public option, as you call it. But wait a minute. Paul Krugman is against Trump. Shouldn't Paul Krugman be loving Trump?
No, Paul Krugman is a neocon and basically a neoliberal. It was Bernie Sanders who yesterday made a public statement that we're willing to work with Trump to help him do the infrastructure in our way. And his economists are the University of Missouri at Kansas City people, Stephanie Kelton, Bill Black, Randy Ray sometimes, and they are quite happy to work with Trump to say, look, we can show you how to fund it at the government spending without being in debt to Wall Street, without giving huge giveaways. So Trump has a chance to work with the most progressive groups, with the Sanders people, who were really, I think, his major support. And the people who voted for Sanders in Michigan and elsewhere, they're the people who threw the election to Trump over Hillary.
Because of all the politicians that Trump insulted along the way, he was least insulting toward Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, because they were saying going for the same audience. That's why he didn't want to debate Bernie Sanders last spring. He said, "Wait a minute, if I debate him, I'll build him up. I can't beat him, but all the polls show I can beat Hillary. Hillary's the lady I want to run against."
Yeah. So again, the MMT, which is what is it stand?
Modern monetary theory.
Modern monetary theory, right? So you talk about Bill Black, yourself, Stephanie Kelton, the School of Economics down there in Kansas City, Kansas, right? Kansas School.
No, Missouri. Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas City, Missouri.
You've been away from America too long.
Yeah, so you guys have been cooking this up for years. Is this you're going to come into the sun finally? This is your time.
If history works the right way, it's our time. We don't know what Trump's going to do, but at least we're holding out an olive branch to him and say, look, just like you're against Obamacare, and in your first speech, Mr. Trump said, a public option was the best form of medical care when he was opposing Obamacare. That was the first Republican debate. And I think down deep he believes it. I think his instincts are very good. The question is whether he's going to go with what used to be his instincts or whether he doesn't have any instincts and just wants to be approved and let the Republican leadership, who he defeated, write his program. We don't have a clue.
Wait a minute. Kansas City is in Missouri?
Yes. There's also a Kansas City in Kansas, but the University of Missouri at Kansas City.
So this is why when I see Bill Black all the time,
UMKC.
I always make a Charlie Parker reference. I like Kansas City, Charlie Parker, the sound of jazz of Kansas City, and he always looks at me like, what the hell are you talking about? I guess this is why. I got the wrong state.
No.
I'm completely crazy. Okay, let's move on. So exit polls showed that 65% of voters thought that trade takes jobs away. Is that correct?
What they really mean is the trade agreement, the way it's written, takes jobs away. And it's not that the trade takes jobs away, it's that the immigration from Mexico that began under Carter, really, was designed to help break the labor unions, to help lower wages. So obviously, if you have a million now Ukrainians and Polish and Arabs coming into Europe, that's going to force down. But what really takes jobs away is the corporate agreement.
Okay, let me rephrase that. So in other words, exit polls show 65% of voters thought that trade deals, bad trade deals, take jobs away. And your answer would be?
This trade deal would have been a disaster. The TPP is a disaster.
Trump's against it.
Yeah.
Hillary's for it. She says she's against it, but she's for it.
That's right.
Canada just came out that Canada is part of NAFTA, and they're now willing to renegotiate NAFTA. They've sent out the signal to the Trump White House saying we're ready to re-talk. I mean, the NAFTA is, I believe, in your opinion, also a very problematic trade deal.
Well, it certainly was always bad for Canada. All the deals that America's made with Canada have been bad for Canada, starting with the auto parts deal way back in the 60s. So yes, these were bad deals, and the worst thing is that NAFTA destroyed Mexican agriculture, that it flooded Mexico with low-price American farm exports, and that really undercut Mexico's ability to feed itself. And now the Mexicans found out that free trade in agriculture prevents countries from feeding themselves and opens the floodgates to subsidized American exports. And under these so-called free trade deals, they really mean America gets to subsidize its industry by grandfathering in all the subsidies and the protectionism and the quotas we have, but other countries can't protect theirs. It's a double standard.
Doesn't America do to Mexico what China does to America?
It's different. Not really, because the imports from Mexico are really from the maquiladoras, the little sweatshops that are all put right along the Mexican border, not for the Mexican economy as a whole. And these are sweatshops really run by American firms. That's not the same as what China's doing at all.
But is it slightly hypocritical? Because, in other words, America's now Trump's going to go after China, and he's going to castigate them, call them a currency manipulator. They don't like what's happening with China. China's undercutting the U.S. market. They've got the currency peg. And so how is that going to go, do you think?
It's not going to go anywhere. There's no way that China can be considered a manipulator by the International Monetary Fund or by any international organization. Producing efficiently at a low cost is not manipulating your currency. In fact, China's been opening up its capital controls and letting capital flow out of China into other countries. So there's no way that
China... their currency.
No,
they peg it.
It's been going. They're gradually letting the capital flow out of China, and that's why the currency is going down. They're unpegging it.
But over the last 20 years now, they've been trying to artificially keep it high.
Well, how have they done this? They've done this by recycling the dollars that go into China into American Treasury bills, and now they're saying, wait a minute, we don't want to peg the currency this way. If pegging the currency means that we buy U.S. Treasury bills to finance the deficit that's spent on military spending, and then the military spending is encircling us, we don't want this anymore. We don't want to have to do this.
Okay, well, let me stick on China for a second, because in other words, you're saying they can't revisit the China relationship because it's based purely on the mechanics of sound trade at the moment, and that's not going to change?
No, there are too many vested interests at stake, and there's no way that you can...
Whose interest at stake? Who's...
Well, the American investors in China, for one thing. If America breaks international law by making unilateral tariffs on China, China says, okay, we'll just take over the American... first of all, this means that the factories that are exporting to the United States, to Walmart primarily, are going to go bust. They'll go way down in value.
That's right.
China will say, thank you, we will now buy them out. And China will take control of the American-controlled industry there. China would love Trump to try to make this war on China because that would drive down the price of American export investments in China. China could buy them out and regain its control over its own factories and resources.
I'm not convinced by your argument. We're going to revisit that, but let me just ask you kind of a side question about Apple Computer, because Apple Computer is a company that keeps hundreds of billions of dollars offshore. And this part of the problem of the American manufacturing industry is that those jobs could be in America. Can Trump will he be in a position to go to Apple and say, either bring that money onshore, or we're going to put a tariff, or you got to open a factory? In other words, he can play hardball with China, with the Apple Computer. Do you think that is a possibility?
I think here's more likely the deal he'd make with Apple. He'd say, look, I will let you bring all this money that you've been avoiding taxes in America. You can bring it all in and pay only a 15% tax rate, as low as you pay in Ireland. You get to bring it all back to America. But you have to spend some of that here on factories. Apple would pick it up in a minute. It would say, my God, here now we get to have evaded taxes for the last 10 years. We've got to bring all this money in. Sure, it's worthwhile building up stuff here. It's a win-win.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to pick it up in another segment. Thanks for being on today. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with thank our guest, Dr. Michael Hudson. Until next time.